talk about what is behind the assault on the Second Amendment? Is it just people don't like guns, or is there something deeper about it?
Absolutely not. If you look at me and these fellows were just having this conversation inside. If you look at all these gun grabbers, universally, just about, I'm not going to say universally, but 90% of them have armed bodyguards. So it's not a matter of them not liking guns. It's they understand it. I think there's the absolute gun grabbers, the ones who are trying to destroy our Second Amendment on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They simply know that the only way to get total control in this country is to de-arm the populace. Now, when you say that, people think, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. That is some wild notion." Nobody's that devious. But all we have to do is look back through human history, just in the 20th century. We look back at the regimes that existed in the Soviet Union, in Nazi Germany, in Cambodia, in China, Pol Pot, Hitler, all of them. All these guys de-armed their population, or were in populations that had already been de-armed or disarmed, in order to take total control. And the socialists in this country know that the only way they're going to gain control of our populace is to destroy what I call our civilian arsenal, which has protected this nation since its inception. So it's not a matter of them despising guns. They absolutely love guns as long as they have all of them. So we have to make sure that they do not meet that the goal of disarming us.
Now, Mark, I haven't verified this, but I've seen comments that Venezuela, before they went total socialist, they confiscated or passed gun laws and took the guns away. Are you familiar with that? Is that true?
I am not. I don't know. Sadly, I don't know a whole lot about Venezuela, but I would not be shocked by that. Of course, that'd be a pattern of behavior that's common among socialism and communism.
Mm-hmm.
The very first things they do is try to de-arm the populace, destroy the culture and the history, and take control of education and turn education from education into indoctrination. It's a pattern that's happened in nation after nation throughout the 20th century. So it would not surprise me at all if that was
Mm-hmm.
true.
Yeah, I saw one of the press releases that things are so bad in Venezuela that some women are selling breast milk and their hair, and as well selling herself into sex, because things are so bad there. I mean, I don't know how many millions of people live down there, but Mark, I got a feeling a whole bunch of them are going to start heading up our way.
Well, that's true. There's a lot of bad things going on in Venezuela, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that want to escape. But Daniel, here's what I would really love to see, and I don't know how they would do it because, as we just stated, I believe they have been disarmed. But if there's ever a time for a nation to rise up, for its people to rise up, physically rise up, it's in Venezuela. I was deeply disturbed when I saw the Venezuelan president, or whatever you call him, on YouTube eating a $500 steak on YouTube. I mean, he's got this world-renowned chef cooking him a steak while
Wow.
his citizens are having to survive off of zoo animals. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just ridiculous. If ever there was a time in their nation for those people to rise up
Mm-hmm.
and against their government, it's now. And
Yeah.
I would hate to see life lost in that pursuit. But I would pray in earnest if they did decide to rise up, no matter what they had to rise up with, be it with sticks, machetes, whatever, rocks.
Mm-hmm.
They really need to rise up and fight for their nation and for the
Mm-hmm.
future of
Mm-hmm.
their country. They really do.
Well, interestingly, as you know, in France, there's a phenomena called the Yellow Jackets, and they're rising up. I think that something similar to that needs to happen in Venezuela, and I think also there's a flare up of that here in this country with that paraplegic soldier who's got a GoFundMe account for the wall. The people saying we sent somebody to D.C. because y'all wouldn't take care and do what we want, and that's have our country secured. So we sent a guy in there to do it, and every machine of the federal government has arrayed against him.
Right. It's the same way. I can put that on a smaller scale right here in North Carolina, we just had the midterm elections, and in our midterm elections in North Carolina, we had several amendments to our Constitution on the ballot, six if I'm not mistaken. And one of those amendments, one that they called the most controversial, was a voter ID amendment, and it passed overwhelmingly. It was one. It had it. I mean, it passed overwhelmingly. The people in this state spoke. They want to have to show their ID to vote to protect their vote. And of course, we've got an idiot leftist governor who vetoed the action. Luckily, we still have the majority. The Republicans still have the majority, and they overrode his veto. But it just goes to show you that even the governor staring the will of the people staring him in his face, and he still relents to this socialist minority that's screaming loud about how it's going to affect people adversely. With all the evidence saying that that's not true, and more importantly, the people of the state letting it be heard with their vote that they want this written into law. And then again, just just willfully ignoring the will of the people and just moving on. And the wall's the same way. You ask most people, and they'll tell you it's a small price to pay for our nation's security. For them to build this wall and make our southern border secure for a myriad of reasons. And you've just got these idiots in Washington who are pushing this socialist agenda and want these illegals to come in so they can be their new vote fodder. And they just won't give way to the will of the people.
Well, what we saw in the Florida vote, bringing in the boxes of votes, and in Georgia, and we saw there's always across this country, there's more people voting left than are in a county. Those things are still going on there. So when somebody says voter ID is a bad thing, you can prevent voters, what they're really saying is, if you have voter ID, the dead people can't vote, the illegals people can't vote, the boxes of ballots and people writing over other people's votes can't happen. So that's the real reason they don't want voter ID.
Absolutely. It is all about not wanting to adhere to proper voting standards. I mean, it's obvious that these people want to cheat at the vote. I mean, it's absolutely 100% obvious that they want to cheat. And it's gotten to the point where now it's become so obvious that it for me, it's reached the point where I think it's about to get dangerous.
Well,
Because, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, you are you whether you volunteer for or not, you are a leader in this movement, certainly, and I appreciate you developing Majority Matters USA. The question for people is, why should there be a Majority Matters? Why should people have to fight for it? I think the one thing the Trump election has done has exposed the fact that the deep state is so deep and so evil that no matter who you vote for or what you want, you're not going to get it. And the people that's behind that, Trump has this knack of kind of tripping them out, exposing them like that. And I think people now realize that not only do we need to have leaders such as yourself, but others of us need to join the fight.
Well, that's absolutely true. I think the thing that I feel most blessed about this, what has precipitated with me, particularly with this city council meeting, is it showed people the power of showing up in person and raising your voice and letting your voice be heard. How, one person can really make a difference. And I'm seeing more and more on social media of people actually going out doing that. The man that you just spoke about with the border wall and the GoFundMe account. That's just one guy that came up with a great idea. He put it out, and other people got behind it. So yeah, I mean, there's this wave that's going across the country now. People, we as a society, and we're really starting to wake up and see that we need to take our rightful place in government. And our rightful place in government is not to be the tail. Our rightful place is to be the head. They need to be listening to us because they're not our leaders. They are our representatives in government.
Well,
and if they're not doing our will, they need to hear about it from us.
You're right. And they are not listening to the will of people. And when the will of the people get a vote made, they always have a judge in there to reverse the will of the people. If they can't do it by vote, they'll do it by a judge. And I don't know, Mark, I know you're on top of things, but have you seen the report that Ruth Bader Ginsburg voted against Trump's asylum rule from the hospital?
Yeah, it's just really sad when somebody like her, who is obviously past her time, she's obviously past her time, is so desperate and so just so unwilling to just let it go. She's just absolutely desperate to not let it go. That she would actually do that from our hospital bed, because I guess she thinks it's being heroic. Where it's actually you're actually just standing in the way of progress, because anyone with a brain can see that what President Trump is doing is moving this country in the right direction. It's obviously see that.
Yeah, I mean, she just recovered from broken ribs, and the lunatic left they were getting ready to mail ribs to the hospital wherever she's at. Somebody
Right.
offered up their husband to her. Some people offered up their liver. She didn't need one. She just come off of that. Now she's got this other operations going on. How do we know that she's even alive, and how do we know that she's not under some kind of psychotropic drug to ease the pain? And she's already over 85, and she's got to be on all kind of medication. She should not have a vote that would affect millions of Americans' lives.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that she knows that she's not in her right facilities, that she doesn't have all her proper facilities. And that was my point of what I was saying, is that she's so desperate to cling to whatever crazy leftist beliefs that she has, that she's willing, even in her foggy state, to still stay there and quite possibly do damage to this country. Because from where I sit, it doesn't seem like she can hold her head up. And that's not, I'm not making fun of the lady, but I mean it's just reality. She is not capable of being a sitting judge. That is obvious. She is not in her right mind. She does not have the facilities to do it. She needs to step aside and let somebody else take it.
Right. I mean, she fell asleep at the State of the Union address, as far as I recall.
Absolutely, she did, and it's very sad that she won't step aside and let someone else take that seat. She's holding up the progress of that court. She really is.
Yeah. All right. We have we have a question for you, Mark. It says, what do you think about going back to the gold standard? I don't know anything about the financial stuff. Do you?
I do not. You'd have to ask my wife, and I have a good friend named Todd. You could ask him about that. I do not know about the gold standard. I do not. Finances is not my ball of wax.
Okay, got you on that there. And then let's get over here to this question. What's your take on the recent withdrawal from Syria?
I think that's one of those things where we're gonna have to sit back and wait and see what happens. But what I believe initially, this is just my initial belief, is this. I do not believe that the folks in Syria who would want to do us harm would be willing to take the risk to try to do it while a Donald Trump is in office. He is not President Obama. He is not playing. He is not going to send them a strongly worded letter condemning their actions. He will take action, and I think they know it. So I think him withdrawing from Syria seems like a good idea now, but with everything, any move that you make politically, it's always a thing where you have to wait and see. But I really cannot see the any of our enemies in Syria trying anything with President Trump, because they know he means business.
Right. Now, I like what Nikki Haley said. She said because of Trump's unpredictability, that she was able to move things on the world scene because of that, because they just frankly afraid he just might go crazy on them, But really, I think, like I say, I think the world plays checkers and Trump plays chess. That's the deal.
Absolutely, and like I said, they know that he's not gonna lay down. He's not President Obama. He's not a weakling. He's not spineless. He's not anti-American. He loves America. He wants America protected, and he's willing to do what it takes to protect this country. And if ISIS should decide it's going to raise its ugly head again, he'll raise his sword up and lop it right off again. So and I think they know that. So I think we'll be fine in Syria.
Well, Mark, you mentioned one of the components of the majority matters is gun rights, Second Amendment. We got New Jersey that just banned retroactively gun magazines. I don't know, from what I've read, 0 people have turned in those magazines so far. So I don't know
Good.
if they're going to go knocking on doors. You got New York; they're instituting, and they want to pass a law that every gun owner has to have $1 million liability policy. Then we
Mhm.
have the bump stock ban, and who knows
Mhm.
what they're going to do in Californicators over there. So I
Yeah.
mean, and it's starting in the liberal states, but I'm sure somehow or another, some judge somewhere is going to just roll it out nationwide. How can we stop those things from happening?
Well, what it all boils down to political action. That's what it boils down to. It boils down to holding your elected officials accountable. It boils down to voting, getting out and actively getting involved with candidates and helping candidates who are pro Second Amendment, pro Constitution. We have to get out. We have to help those people in their campaigns. We have to volunteer on their campaigns. We have to talk to our friends, talk to our families, talk to our coworkers, and tell them why these things are important.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. But as far as if that fails, Daniel, if that fails, and people can say whatever they want to say. If that fails, and these politicians continue to push this anti-gun agenda, this gun-grabbing agenda, I fear what's going to happen is this. You're going to have a nation full of criminals who are going to choose to disregard the law and follow the Constitution. And I cannot say that I blame anyone for doing that. I have said this time and time again. The right to bear arms is a right that is given to me not by the Constitution. It's affirmed by our Constitution, but it is given to me by God.
Mm-hmm.
It was endowed to me by my Creator, the right to defend myself and be able to defend myself.
Mm-hmm.
It was Him who gave me the ability to make and operate complicated weapons for the purpose of feeding myself and defending myself. I will not have those rights taken away from me by any man. And if these politicians continue on this path of trying to take away our constitutional rights, then we will be criminals. We will be criminals by holding on to our weapons,
Mm-hmm.
but we will be righteous according to our Constitution, and more importantly, we will be righteous in the sight of God because those are God-given rights. So,
There's BC and AD, before Christ, after Christ, and now I think there needs to be a BT and AT, but BT. This country was on autopilot on the way to the abyss. Certainly the Second Amendment would have been wiped out completely, and certainly they would have installed judges to make sure they could just wipe it out, probably even without a vote. And so we barely made it to AD after Trump, in which, as far as I can tell, he just put the slow down on it, but the forces are all around him. The thing of it is, for people to realize that while things were on autopilot, they were going, and everybody thought things were the way they're supposed to be, and that this is a natural progression of things. But what we've really found is there's a design to destroy the America that we know, the Constitution that we live by and are protected by, for some kind of globalist agenda. And Trump just turned the light on, and people need to understand that we cannot let this go on autopilot. We need to come together and start rising up as the American people, one people under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Man, I'm on a soapbox there, but we cannot stay static anymore. There's a war on, and if we're not in that war, we're a prisoner.
that's absolutely true. That's one of the things that I talk about a lot on my Facebook page, and I talk to people a lot about. I think there's been a concentrated effort, particularly after the end of World War II. There's been a concentrated effort in this country to stagnate the minds of the youth in this country and to corner the minds of conservative adults in this country. And I think one of the ways they've done it is through pop culture, a mix of television, movies, music, magazines, liberal news media. And they have gotten us to the point where we have gotten to a point in this country where we have been so consumed with so-called life that we have forgotten what it is that we're living for. What we're living for in this country, what we should be living for in this country, is always, is with the idea of giving our future generations a better way of life. And that better way of life includes the same freedoms that we have enjoyed throughout our lifetimes. It's certainly not socialism. It's not communism. It's not any of those ideas. And in order to preserve those things, we have to be politically active, we have to be socially active, and we have to be politically aware and socially aware. And we have to put those things into actions to make sure that we preserve those freedoms. Freedom is not just a stagnant thing. Like you said, it's not something that's given to you and you don't do anything with it. I think it was William Wallace in Braveheart that says, you are free men. What will you do with that freedom? What you should do with your freedom is always be mindful that it can go away, and you should be willing to defend that freedom. And the way we do it now is through political action, and that's what we need to do.
Well, I think a lot of Americans expected that our elected representatives would take care of business for us and enact laws. You know, one of the things about this wall situation going on now is that when Trump agreed to sign the omnibus spending bill, was it last year, the GOP leadership promised funding for the wall by the end of the year. What we found out at the end of the year, GOP don't want anything to do with that wall. They might as well just put a D in front of their name there, because it's ridiculous. They promised it. They're not delivering. Trump was installed to make it happen. We didn't, as a nation, we didn't elect Congress. Individual states did. The country elected Trump. Trump's agenda is to build that wall. That's the people's agenda. There might be local agendas that these congressmen want to fight for a bridge here and a building there, but the wall is the national thing that we sent them to do, and our will is being thwarted.
That's absolutely right. Again, another example of how the socialists don't care about the will of the people. They don't care about the will of the people. The only thing they want from us is our tax money, so they can push their agenda. That's the only thing they want from us. They want from us. They want to get as much taxes from us as they can. They want us to shut up, go home, drink beer, watch television, and look at the NFL and the NBA and listen to the celebrities and just be quiet. That's what they want. They want to do their will, not ours. And we have to change that dynamic. And the way we change that dynamic again is by becoming politically aware and politically active. It is the biggest thing you can do for your future generations, your children, your grandchildren, and so on, is by becoming politically active, because that is going to make the decision of what kind of nation they have after we're gone.
Well, you were treading around a conflict that may include a war scenario of some type, maybe a resistance of some type that may include that type of resistance. But right now, I think that if we apply the political backlash and involvement, we'll never get to the other.
That's exactly right. That's why it's so crucial that we do this. Because what I fear is, if we don't do this, if we don't get politically involved, if we don't get politically active, we're going to reach a point where our backs are absolutely against the wall, where people's backs are against the wall, and they're going to get desperate. We're going to reach a situation like Venezuela is in, and then things will explode and turn violent. And we're a better nation than that.
Yeah,
we're a stronger people than that, and we're a smarter people than that. We can figure this thing out. We can figure out how to keep our Constitution in place, keep our laws in place, and keep this nation going. It's just a matter of us, for lack of a better word or phrase, getting off our butts and doing it.
This has got a question from our YouTube chat. Mark, it says, do you feel that God's hand is over America, or is it been pulled back?
I think that there are enough faithful people in this country still praying for this country in earnest, that God still hears our prayers and is still answering our prayers. And we still live in a land of overwhelming abundance and blessings, and I believe his hand is still on this nation. However, and I have said this plenty of times in the past, I believe that if we continue on this slope of kicking him out of every venue, out of forgetting the blessings he's endowed us with, and pushing him out of the public square, and not allowing him to be part of the equation that solves the problems in this country, I think eventually we'll get to a point where he will no longer have his hand on us, particularly in areas of like abortion. Abortion is a scourge. I think that
Mm-hmm.
the innocent blood that's shed in abortion, people may not agree with it, but the innocent blood that's shed in abortion has to be answered for.
Mm-hmm.
And if we continue to allow abortion to go unimpeded the way it is, if we continue to allow our government to fund abortion, I think eventually we're going to have to answer for that.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also see in some of this stuff that's going on now, particularly like with this young kid who was in the dancing in the nightclub. I mean, how ridiculous is that? So, yeah, again, it's going to be completely up to us as to whether or not the hand of God stays on this country. And I think the way that we do that is by giving thanks to Him and inviting Him in, not inviting Him into the conversation, but letting Him guide the conversation, letting Him be our conscience and our guide the way we're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. I replied to a run of the mill Yahoo article. That's my sort of my homepage there because I got a Yahoo email address. Of course, that particular homepage has at least 10 anti-Trump articles a day, if not more, and then 10 on his family, 10 on his business relations. I mean, it's just 100%. So I replied that that God installed Trump at a particular time in space. And the reply to me was, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And I just wrote back, I will defer to Benjamin Franklin, who said, the older I get, the more I am convinced God rules in the affairs of men. So my hope is that God is still ruling in the affairs of men. And it does seem on this level, Mark, that the Bible says, let his enemies be scattered. Every time Trump does something, it's like he dangles out a little shiny object. And the liberals think, we got him. This is it. And they all go running toward that little shiny object. And then it's like God exposes them and they're humiliated, and their true colors is like what their sin is now broadcast. In other words, it was turned back on them. There's so many ways. It's like this Russia investigation. They're all pointing at Trump, but they're all pointing at things that they're already guilty of. And then you got this Adam Schiff with those beady eyes. That guy, you talk about Trump paying some bimbo off. He evidently he used government money to pay a little boy off. So I don't know. That's another one of those little objects.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole thing with President Trump, when you talk about what you're talking about, sometimes I think of it, and I think that God is giving us a chance to see how this is operating, so people can look at it and see, hey, this is the way your nation is supposed to be run. This is the way things are supposed to be. President Trump is not a perfect man. He's not, he's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But he's perfect for the job that he's doing. And it's like that old joke about the guy who's caught in the flood, and that's kind of what I sometimes compare America to. The guy's he's sitting at his house, and they say a flood's coming. And so a car goes by, and the people say, hey, you better come with us because the flood's coming. He says, no, I'm going to wait for God to save me. And then the water comes up a little more, and a boat comes by, and he says, no, go ahead. I'm going to wait for God to save me. And then he's sitting on his roof, and a helicopter comes by, and he says, no, I'm waiting for God to save me. And then he drowns, he dies. He's standing in front of God. He says, God, I was faithful to you. Why did you let me die? And God looks at him and says, I tried to save you. I sent a car, a boat, and a helicopter to get you, and you ignored them all. And in this country, we've been given chance after chance that same way. And I think President Trump is another chance for us to see how this nation is supposed to be run and what we're supposed to have at our helm. And if we don't embrace that fully in this country, I think we're going to end up like the guy in the story. We're going to end up saying what happened. Mm-hmm. And we'll have to look back at it and say we had our chance and we let it go.
Well, I think it's getting more clear for people out there to see that there was an evil agenda that was working in our government, and we call it the deep state. And it just every day the revelation of the deep state activities seems to come out, and people need to get involved. And when talking about your organization, Media Matters USA, what does that organization do? How can people join it? What's going on with that?
Okay, well, I have a website. It's www.majoritymattersusa.com. And you can go on the website. You can look through all the information that's on there. And, of course, there's a donate button where you can donate. But my ultimate goal is going to be threefold. It's going to be a combination of social media, public appearances, and the internet in all forms, whether that be YouTube, websites, and so forth, to spread a message of conservatism in this country. Three main topics. Those three main topics being the Second Amendment, uh, patriotism, and or the Second Amendment, abortion, and anti-socialism. I'm sorry. Those are the three main topics that we're talking about, because for me, those are the three most pressing issues of our time. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get that message out to people, and it's just another thing something that I've been saying since I've been on social media and been pushing politics on social media. My agenda is not really to change anybody's mind, so to speak. It's not really to get people to convert to anything. I am of the firm belief that there are millions of people in this country that are silent about politics, who believe the exact same thing that you and I believe. They have just not been encouraged to speak up. And we need to encourage those folks to rise up and speak up. Mm-hmm. And I think, just like I said in the city council speech, the vast majority of people in this country, we all want the same thing. We want to be secure in our persons. We want prosperity. We want peace. We want all those things. We want a better future for our children. And I truly believe that the way to achieve those things is through capitalism, conservatism, republicanism, and it's certainly not by socialism. Mm-hmm. So that is our mission at Majority Matters.
You mentioned the video that has gone viral about that little boy doing some kind of dance in front of a bunch of homosexuals, whatever, and getting paid for it. And then you had there's another video out there of, I think it was a grandfather, a school made a little boy put a dress on in a public school.
Yeah.
This is where we're at. This is what happens when good people don't say anything. Oh, the school system's fine. They're intelligent people, but they got degrees. They got letters after their name. Certainly they know what they're doing. They're to educate our kids. But that's not what's happening. I think the more of these things come out, people got to understand that's not what's happening. They're being indoctrinated, and the next generation of people that could care less about the Constitution, probably never even heard of it, are the ones that's going to take our place.
That's exactly right. We just talked about that a little bit earlier about how educators are no longer educating; they're indoctrinating, and it's very sad. It's very sad that so many people now are afraid to stand up and speak up against these things that they say. I was thrilled when I saw the fellow who went into the school and told these people, don't put a dress on my grandson or my son anymore. I really believe that there is an evil agenda behind all of this. I'm certain I'm a Christian, and I certainly believe that homosexuality is a sin. I know that distresses a lot of people, but I do not despise homosexuals. I do not begrudge homosexuals. Homosexuals don't commit an act any more egregious than some of the acts I committed before I became saved. But the thing about it is, I believe there is an absolute cabal of people who are using the homosexual agenda to twist the minds of our youth, and it is very, very sad. Daniel, we say these things. You talked about the deep state. We talked about the so-called homosexual agenda. And invariably, people will always say to me, that is ridiculous. They'll say, oh, gosh, people are just not that evil. And when they say that, it blows my mind. I'm thinking, can you please go open a history book? Can you go back and look at Joseph Stalin, who intentionally starved some 6 to 9 million people, 6 to 9 million of his own people to death in the Ukraine? Can you go back and look at Adolf Hitler, who killed 6 million Jewish people simply because he thought they didn't have the right to exist? Can you go back and look at the Khmer Rouge and Mao Zedong, who killed millions in the Far East simply because they wanted control? People don't think that evil exists when it has been around us for so long. Documented cases of millions who have been killed by these what we now call the deep state and these cabals of people who want control, and people still do not believe. It's almost like bringing to light that old saying that the greatest trick the devil ever did was making people believe he doesn't exist. And we can see that in spades throughout history. People do not believe that there's this evil group of people who are carrying out evil agendas, but they absolutely are.
Well, Mark, I've been saying this that should Hillary run and get in there, she is clearly a bitter old bag, and she is going to exact her vengeance on what she considers the deplorables or anybody that supports Trump. And people think that she can't, but they, like you just said, history shows that a despot getting in power with an uneducated society, dumbed down and drugged up, they'll be the first to say, take them away. They've been blocking progress. People don't think that can happen, but it can happen. And I think that war is the preparation for that is on multiple fronts. Getting all the kids hooked up on legal marijuana, bringing up illegal immigrants, raping and killing and drugging the country that way. Stopping every moral law that we have on the books, taking down 10 Commandments, eliminate the word Christmas, war on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's all preparation for an atheistic, guileless society where somebody like her could make some of the most outrageous demands of her enemies, and people will agree to it.
That is absolutely right. And the fact that people don't believe that is a testament to how little people have paid attention throughout history. I mean, the most stark example that people have, and this is one of the things that, Daniel, one of the things that irks me, really, really irks me. Whenever we talk about evil regimes, the first evil regime everybody always looks to is the Nazis, because they're such a glaring example. But we have absolutely not paid attention to so many more egregious acts of absolute inhumanity in the 20th century. Concerning communism. As I said, Joseph Stalin starved millions of Ukrainians, and this guy, he didn't do it by accident. He did it on purpose to get more control of his country. He starved to death millions of people. And you just think about that. The horrible act of being starved to death. And this guy did it on purpose to millions of people. You think about all the couple of 100 million people that died under Mao Zedong in China, and so many people died under the Khmer Rouge that we don't know whether it was 1 million or 10 million. And we have forgotten all these egregious acts that occurred before and after the Nazis. So it's just a matter of people opening up their eyes and realizing that when you give absolute power to any group of people, it can absolutely corrupt them and make them do very terrible things. And right now we're living in a society where everybody wants to try to be like this, what do you call it? Hakuna Matata, no worries because everything's fine and everybody's got an iPhone and a house and a car. That could all crumble in a second if we're not vigilant.
Absolutely.
And stand up against
in the space of time, it would only take a second. Right now, Mark, China has something called the social media scoring index, and that social media score is if you visit the wrong website, make the wrong tweet or whatever you do, and they don't like it, you get dinged. And there's reports coming out now that you won't get a mortgage, you won't be able to board a plane. People have said they went to the airport and they couldn't get on the plane because their social media score was too low, and the guy had to go to a judge and explain why he tweeted something. And even when he retracted, the judge said, I don't believe you. You got a year to get your social media score. People say that wouldn't happen here. Wait a minute. There's something the internet giants are developing now called it's called the online index score. So they're developing the same thing as a social media score in China. They're developing it here. And as you know, so many people have already been dinged, put in Facebook jail, Twitter accounts deleted. They're already doing that. They're already prepping the control in the minds of people. Have you been affected by any of these social giants and their censorship?
Well, I've suspected for a while that, some of them may be playing kind of fast and loose with my Facebook account. But I tell you, the most disturbing thing that I've heard on that front, Daniel, is I heard, and I can't remember what state it was, that some city council member or some state representative wanted, in order for people to get a gun permit, they wanted their social media accounts to be reviewed. Now when I read that, I thought to myself, and that is really dangerous. That is extremely dangerous for somebody to want to delve into your personal life,
Hmm.
to look at your social media account, uh, in order for you to be able to exercise your
Hmm.
constitutional rights.
Hmm.
That is just absolutely ridiculous. It points to everything that we're talking about here.
Hmm.
Um, one thing you talked about China, and it's funny. I just saw a report about China, and it said that China is cracking down on pornography, and
Hmm.
if you get caught watching pornography online, you get thrown in jail or something to that effect. And I thought about it for a second. I said, that's crazy. China is an atheist country, and they're cracking down on porn. But America is supposed to be a Christian nation, and we just let it slide. But then I thought about it for a second, and I said, it makes sense because China is not a free nation. America is a free nation. America is based on the ideas
Hmm.
of, whether people like it or not, it's based on the ideas that are behind Christianity, which is freedom.
Hmm.
Christianity gives you a free choice to choose whether or not you want to follow along and be a part of the kingdom of God, or whether or not you want to be just go off on your own and do your own thing. No matter which one you choose, you're going to have to suffer the consequences.
Hmm.
America is the same way. We don't force our people to do anything. We let them make their choices,
Hmm.
but they'll have to live with them. And then when I thought about it in that way, I said, well, yeah, that's why it's that way,
Hmm.
because we're a free nation. We allow people to make their own choices, while China doesn't.
Well, as close as we are to this leftist takeover, I don't know if Trump's going to get in there again or not. But the development of the online index score can easily be taken by a Hillary type of a person, and then saying, giving it to say companies, and then companies won't hire you if they say, "Oh, we've got a right wing nut job here that's
Mm-hmm.
that's against maybe gay marriage or against abortion or against who knows what against
Mm-hmm.
illegal immigrants, against MS-13. You might get dinged for being against MS-13 gangs now, the way they look at it. So they could develop that and say, well, they wouldn't happen here. Well, the infrastructure is being built and tested right now. So again, that goes back to our earlier conversation. People have got to get involved.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right. We do have to get involved, but you know what else, Daniel? We talk about this too. When you look at it from a aspect of from a religious aspect, again, going back to Christianity and going back to the Bible tells us there'll be a time when, if you do not relent and don't submit to the will of the beast, you won't be able to buy or sell. And there's a lot of things that are going on right now that are just that way. Where we got. Sometimes you just have to make a stand, and you have to lose friends sometimes and families. And I've had some instances with friends that have given up jobs because they wouldn't relent to these things. So you're absolutely right. If we're not vigilant and we don't get involved and stay involved and put the right people in office as our representatives, we can run into a time
Mm-hmm.
where our rights are just will be wiped away.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have to either toe the line, or we'll have to be like John the Baptist and live out in the wilderness
Mm-hmm.
and eat locusts and honey.
Well, that's right. And I think people really don't realize how close to that line we are, either to an armed conflict or having your way of life just ruined anyway, because maybe your current employer gets a hold of your social index score. I'm just telling the evil and the depth of hatred that the left has for anything that is good in this country. People is almost the normal mind can't really conceive that. And that's been the problem with the Republicans all this time. The Democrats have had a plan, and they're rolling that plan out and they're sticking together, and it's to hand this country over to the globalists and to bring America down. But the Republicans, doleful as they are, saying they certainly can't. They certainly, didn't trade 25% of our uranium, because, that's just a good thing to do. Or, I mean, they just can't, it doesn't get into their brain how evil these people are. And that's part of the problem.
That is absolutely part of the problem. We Republicans have been in a dogfight since Reconstruction, and we have not realized it. We just simply have not realized it. We have tried to play nice. We've tried to negotiate. We've tried to relent. We tried to give. We tried to compromise. And the whole time we've been doing it with a party full of madmen. I mean, just absolute madmen. Ever since Reconstruction, the people that come up with the most ridiculous notions. We went from being a bunch of hood wearing, bigoted Klansmen to now being a bunch of tattooed and pierced up and uh, hammer and sickle waving communists. So we're not dealing with rational people. We're absolutely not dealing with rational people. We're not dealing with people who love this country. We're dealing with people who want to destroy this country, tear this country down, and rebuild it in the image of European socialism. And we have to realize that. And we will have to realize that we have to be as demonstrative with the truth as they are with their lies. And I don't understand why these politicians can't see that. They can't see the success of things, the thing like with Lindsey Graham. When Lindsey Graham finally raised up his voice and finally made himself heard and finally slammed his hand on the table and said enough is enough, how people responded to that. I mean, not just political people, everybody who has a piece of common sense in their head responded to that, and we have really got to start putting people in office who are going to do those types of things more and more.
Really, and that's what really started you on your life trek here when you stood up in that city county meeting and said enough is enough, and that people have to get there. But again, if we don't do that now, it's going to get even uglier. A little of that cancer, it will metastasize into something larger, and it's consuming the United States. Mark, I want to have you. I've been thinking about this all week. I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the criminal justice agreement that Trump has been making?
With you talking about the prison reform?
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing. I think that it's long overdue. Common sense prison reform is long overdue, and I think it's a great way to reach out to people who have been reluctant to get into the political process as well. I think it's a very good way to wake people up and say, hey, we have people at the highest level of government who are concerned with making sure that our issues are heard. And I think it's very good in that way. And as I said, it's not this thing where, like with Obama, just letting a bunch of drug dealers out of jail. We're really delving into making sure that people are treated fairly who are in the prison system, and more importantly, people that are coming out of the prison system are treated fairly and given a fair shake after they've done their time and they get out. So I think it's an absolute wonderful thing. Now, one thing that I'm really dismayed about, particularly here in North Carolina, when you talk about criminal justice, we have some new sheriffs in Guilford and Wake County, and I think maybe Forsyth County. I can't remember, but we have one in Wake County. This guy's an absolute nut job. He is a nut job. He's not cooperating with ICE, and he says he's going to stop calling the prisoners inmates. He's going to call them residents. I mean, he's a leftist idiot, and it's really concerning to me because I'm looking at him and looking at how he's treating these prisoners, and I'm wondering, so now what are you going to do with law-abiding citizens when it comes to their rights to own a firearms? It's really concerning for a guy to be so connected to criminals who is in law enforcement. It kind of makes me think, do you have some criminal intent inside of you for you to be so connected to the criminal? I mean, I understand you want to treat them fairly. I understand you want to be a person that's going to be honorable in dealing with them, but to be so pro-criminal is disconcerting, particularly for somebody that holds the highest law enforcement position in the county.
Yeah, I was astounded that Van Jones was on CNN and he gave Trump all the kudos in the world for that reform bill.
Yes, yeah, and it, like I said, it's something that's long overdue in this nation. Prison reform is, and we, if we continue on that same track, we're going to continue to have more and more people who feel disenfranchised and feel like they don't have a way out after they get out of prison. And I really think that it's a very good idea, and we need to. It's a thing where we need to make it even better.
Somebody wrote in. They said, Mark, what is your favorite weapon of choice for home protection?
You know what? I would say I don't know what to say. I've never had to use one, but I would say if it came right down to it, I would probably use my Glock. I have a Glock 9 millimeter. I want to give a shout out to Gun Owners of America, because Gun Owners of America early in this whole thing reached out to me. I did a fantastic interview with Eric Pratt. A
Hmm.
wonderful interview. It's on YouTube. If any of you all are listening, want to go see it. And they actually presented me with a brand new Glock 9 millimeter, Glock 19, fifth
Oh,
generation.
sweet.
Fantastic weapon. I love it. Thank God I have not had to use it for home
Hmm.
defense. But I think if it came down to it, that would probably be the one that I would use. Would probably be that with some critical defense 9 millimeter ammunition.
Hmm. Well, they're rolling out that ban against bump stocks, but there are plenty of videos. I showed one of my running points. You can fire a semi-automatic weapon just like automatic, just little action on your finger there. You don't, So it seems, Americans are pretty inventive. As our rights get taken, as the government closes around, we have ways of getting around it. But I think one of our
Hmm.
biggest ways to resist is to join together in groups, because as you say, individuals make a difference, but then we need to coalesce into groups at
That's right.
least, and then maybe those groups into larger groups, because we want this thing to be peaceful resistance. We're not about the business going running down the street, lighting things on fire, and doing
Right.
various things and throwing rocks at the police. But you
Hmm.
know what? We're at a point where, Mark, we have to resist, because the government has clearly shown our best interest is not what they're doing. They have their own
That's right.
agenda, and they just the lies that they give to us. If a politician speaks, he's lying. He or she is lying. So we can vote, but those votes are getting tampered with.
Yes.
So I guess the larger numbers that there are in groups, the better.
That's absolutely right. That's one of the things I tell people all the time. The two groups that I talk about a lot are Gun Owners of America and the NRA. And there's some contention between those two groups, of course.
Hmm.
There's differences of opinions about gun ownerships and about gun ownership and gun rights, and so to speak, in the Second Amendment and how to apply it. But I think that if we're going to have that conversation, those are the groups that need to have that conversation. Those are the two groups that need to be having the conversation around that. We don't need to be having that conversation with, some the sheriff's league or whatever, and the Communist Party. We need to be having that conversation between people who want to preserve those rights and not people who want to take those rights away. We can work out the nuances be, amongst ourselves, but I would encourage anybody out there listening who is not a member of one of those organizations to join that organization. And if you don't join one of those organizations, to join some type of organization that is going to uh, work towards holding on to our Constitution and holding on to our way of life. Because, as you said, it takes individual effort, but it takes a collective of people coming together, working hard together, and to get these things done. So, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. We must come together in groups to do this work.
When the left libs aren't shooting somebody on the baseball field, a lot of times they're chasing people down that they disagree with at restaurants and various things. A question came in from one of the viewers. Mark said, "Have you had any backlash at any of the meetings you've been to, specifically against you?"
No. And I liken it, a lot of it, Daniel. And I hate to even say this, but I liken a lot of it to the fact of it. I run into the same thing. Uh, animal rights activists will dash red paint on a little old lady in a fur coat.
Mm-hmm.
But when's the last time you saw them do that to a biker? And it's
No.
kind of the same thing with me. When I'm walking through an airport at in the middle of the afternoon, my feet are hurting, and I got a scowl on my face, and I'm wearing an NRA hat. There are not a whole lot of people who are going to step up to me and say anything. Now, if I was maybe a little old man who was maybe looked like I was frail and I had my "Make America Great Again" hat on or
Mm-hmm.
my NRA hat on, or if I was a thin young lady, with the NRA hat on or Make America Great hat on again, would somebody step up to me and say something, it's much more likely that they would.
Mm-hmm.
But I have not gotten any of that backlash.
I'll tell
I
you
have
what,
not.
one of my favorite videos, Mark, I don't know if you've seen it, but I think it's the anti-fall resistance meets, I don't know, the Patriots or something, but this one guy, he had black ski mask on, you know, a little skinny dude, and this guy just code cocks him, man, just knocked him out. I want to put that.
Yeah,
Have you seen that? I just want to put that on a loop.
Yeah, I love that. I love that video too. He hits that guy. That guy goes down like a nanny goat. He just steps up and goes right to the ground.
I know. I mean, this dude was he was horizontal, man, flying backward. It was so cool. All right, got another question for you from Mexico Unexplained, a YouTube viewer. It says, Mark, are you considering ever running for public office? If so, which one would it be?
No, I'm not considering running for public office, and I tell you why. Politics, I believe, is it's somebody's gift. I don't believe that's my gift. I think if I ran for public office, I would have to temper my message, and I think that there are a lot of things that I need to say that are some very hard truths need to be said, and I don't believe that anybody in politics can say those hard truths without shutting off the political conversation. I think those hard truths need to be said outside of politics. They're ideas that need to be disseminated amongst the general populace first, and spread amongst the general populace, and then those ideas can be introduced politically. But no, I don't plan on running for any public office.
Well, that picture I have in our background right now, I mean, you're looking presidential there, Mark. I don't know if you can see it,
yeah.
but all right.
No, I don't know about that. So.
All right, and here's this is a kind of a race-based question. Let's get it out, I guess. Are you hated by black people?
No, not any more than I am by any other leftist. I'm just not liked by leftists. Certainly, when I'm confronted on social media by other black people, it's always the same tone. But I've been confronted in that way for so many years that it doesn't even bother me anymore. Most of that comes from a position, and I'm going to say this: most of that comes from a position of ignorance, and that ignorance is that a lot of the people who attack me, they don't know their own history, they don't know the history of this country. And they really just simply don't understand what I'm saying. They don't understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. They just know they're not supposed to like them. So it doesn't bother me anymore. And but I don't. I wouldn't say that I'm disliked by black people. I would say that because a lot of times when I'm having conversations with other black people, they agree with me with just about 99% of the things I say.
Yeah.
One of the things, if I can say this real quick, and I've been saying this for years, if there's any group of people in this country that are conservative, it is black people. Black people are very conservative. We are very, very conservative. The thing that I don't understand is why we lose that conservatism when we go in the voting booth. And that is the $1 million question that the Republican Party has to answer is how can we not get black people in this country to keep their conservatism in the voting booth and stop voting for people that are voting against and stop them from voting against their own self-interest and voting against their own beliefs.
One thing we found out with the election of Trump is how quickly the country can turn around. The taxes, the largest tax cut ever, and then the things the tax cut for the corporation, the blocking, talking to companies saying, hey, if you're going to move your company out, then we'll deal with you, and various, so companies started coming back here. All these things that transpired within the first 2 years, which is a sea change, and this country's the GDP's up and the unemployment is way down, and among African Americans, down to everybody's unemployment is down. But that just shows you, and I'm thinking about, the intractable problems of Baltimore, of Chicago, of LA for that matter, that if America would come together, we could quickly turn these things around, but somebody seems to be benefiting on the chaos and the violence that's out there. They seem to be making a living off that. Mark, how would you explain those intractable problems never appearing to be solved?
It's an industry. It's absolute industry. Just like you said, somebody's benefiting from it, and I tell you exactly who's benefiting from it. Uh, 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 these so-called social justice warriors. That's one group of people that's benefiting from it. People who make trouble so they can sell trouble and get paid because of the trouble. And then there's these race hustling poverty pimps like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. And then there's these low quality, lazy politicians who take the low road instead of the high road, and use things like race and racial strife to get elected, and of course class warfare to get elected. And then once they get into office, they just subscribe to crony capitalism to line their pockets at the expense of their constituents. We see it time and time and time and time again. That's exactly why those places exist. You look at those places, and invariably at the top of every one of them, and I'm going to say this whether people like it or not, at the top of every one of them is a cockroach that's feeding on the constituency. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, how many times have we seen these politicians end up in prison behind corruption? How many times have we seen them fail Marion Barry smoking crack on with prostitutes in a hotel room, and they elect the guy right back into office? So it's a combination of those three things in those areas that's really destroying them and keeping them down. The issue is, how do we break that up? What do we do to break that up? And I put it to you, the way we break that up, we have to stop being afraid to say some of the things that I just said.
Well, it reminds me of one of the more outstanding views of that is Maxine Waters, who doesn't live in the neighborhood that she serves. She lives in a multi-million-dollar place, probably with a wall. And the people that in her district are suffering gun violence and poverty forever. And it's like they cheer her on to victory. They have no part of that victory. She brings them nothing except chaos and just bad news. I've never seen any vision, but she's emblematic. She's not alone. She's emblematic across the country of leftists, most of them. I mean, even GOP for that matter. Some of them, probably a lot of them. That people say, we're going to elect you and go, and their situation don't change at all. I just don't get how that doesn't register. Wait a minute, this has been violence. I can't send my kid to school without getting shot. Get shot at. But hey, I'm going to vote for Maxine Waters. Go, Max. Go. That it doesn't do anything. I can't understand why that cycle exists.
That's the $1 million question. Why are these people voting against their own self-interest? Why are they voting for these parasites and cockroaches who are not doing anything? Absolutely doing nothing for them. People that are supposed to be there representing them, going to Washington, going to these state houses, going to these city council chambers, making life better for them by representing their interests. They're just absolutely not doing that. They're going to all these different places, and the only thing they're doing is serving their own self-interest. I mean, and you see it. I mean, I believe Maxine Waters, she paid her daughter $700,000 a year to stuff mailers. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And the people, her constituents, they allow that, and they keep voting her in office. The lady she's completely useless as a politician. She is completely useless to anybody except herself.
Well,
she serves nobody except her own self-interest.
Her platform to her constituents is impeach 45, and I'm just wondering, how many jobs is that going to create?
Exactly, not one.
And that's what we have to deal with. And Mark, you're part of Americans that are fed up, and you're making a difference out there. And I'm so proud to have you on the program tonight for that. And I hope that people are inspired, because you're just an ordinary American. You live in unordinary times. Normal is gone. And now time it's decision time. Every generation has had to make a sacrifice. Right now, as we said earlier, our sacrifice could be just joining the NRA or Gun Owners of America, or groups that are dedicated to freedom. And it's so creepy that we have to fight for our freedom. This is crazy. You think we'd be fighting foreign enemies, but we're fighting terrorists basically from the inside. These are domestic terrorists that are trying to let our country be invaded, trying to corrupt our children, sexualize our children. Our time is now. Our generation, Mark, yours and I's, we've been called to do what we can to fight this and get the future generation headed back the right way.
That's absolutely right. You mentioned these generations that have had to make decisions. We had a generation of people who had to decide whether or not they were going to stand up and fight the British Crown. We had another generation that had to stand up and decide whether or not they were going to fight to keep this union, keep this nation a union, or two separate entities.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had another generation that had to decide whether or not they were going to go to Europe and fight for freedom there, and fight for the freedom of the world there. And then we had another generation that had to decide whether or not they were going to fight the communists in Korea and Vietnam. And then we've had this recent generation that had to stand up and fight against the terrorists on the world stage. Mm-hmm. And now we've got people that have got to decide whether or not they're going to stand up in this country and fight to keep to make sure this country goes one or two ways. Either we're going to turn into a nation of socialist stooges under the thumb of a bunch of elitists, or we're going to stay the free nation that God blessed us with. Mm-hmm. And those are the choices that we have today. And my prayer is that the vast majority of people in this country will choose the latter and choose to fight to keep this nation free.
Well said. Well said. How can people just follow you or join your organization? Give me a little bit more on the Media Matters. Just go to your website. How's that all happen?
It's Majority Matters. It's www.majoritymattersusa.com. Now you can go to that website. The major way people can help me right now is through donations. What we're planning to try to do is planning to try to travel around the country and hold town halls. And in order to do that, of course, it's going to take funds in order to do that. So that's one of the main ways that people can help is by joining the website. We have a membership. If you don't want to buy a membership, you can give a donation, no matter how big or large or small. Every dollar is important. But you can follow me there on that. Join that website. Also, you can follow me where I do most of my stuff right now. It's on my Facebook page, my own personal Facebook page, which is under my name, Mark Keith Robinson. And that will also lead you to two other Facebook pages I have, which is I Am the Majority, and I have a Majority Matters Facebook page. And both of those things can also lead you to the website. So if you go online and type my name in under Google, there's a myriad of ways you can find me, but those are the four major ways that I can be found.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark, I really appreciate what you do. This country needs good men like yourself. And, you got thrust in, really, you're in a leadership position. A lot of people may not express their opinions of you or follow or let you know what they're watching, but I can guarantee you are being watched. And people are very proud of you. And we need more men like you out there. And I appreciate you coming on Edge Television broadcast, Mark. Can we have you on again sometime?
Absolutely. All you got to do is give me a call. I love your show. I love being on here. We have a great conversation.
All right. Hey, man, now when you go back to party, I want you to tell everybody I appreciate them letting you go to do this interview.
All right. I will.
Okay.
I'm going to get a ton of questions when I go back in here anyway.
There you go. and say, hey, man, go to the website and then they can see this video. Come to the Edge. All right, Mark, we'll give you a shout out, and God bless you and your wife.
All right. Thank you. Same to you, Daniel. You have a Merry Christmas.
And you too, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.